can't be serious, man. You cannot be serious!
Now, Don and Fiona, Phoebe, not often do we get excited about... We do get very excited about the people we interview because we only like to interview the people we think our audience, which is immense, Don, would like to hear. So I'm going to introduce this man. He is, and he's on the phone, obviously, because he's in Queensland. I'll say his name to start with. His name is Russell Morris, and he's not the St Kilda footballer. He is an icon of the Australian music industry. And if you go to the Wikipedia, there is so much about this man. So what we'll do is we'll just give a quick thumbnail sketch of what he's done, and then Don, up to us and you, Phoebe, we will see if we can ask him some sensible questions which will portray the great man and the great musician that he is. So he's had 5 top 10s in the 60s and 70s. This is just a little snapshot of the Wikipedia thing. He was made into the ARIA Hall of Fame in 2008. The real thing, the real thing was put into the National Film Archives in 2013. It is one of the great songs. We'll ask him about that because there was some controversy over it when it first came out, about its length and all that sort of stuff. I could go on about all who we're speaking to, but if you don't know who Russell Morris is, you haven't been on the planet in Australia anyhow for a lifetime. And we have him on the line. He's speaking to us from Queensland. Russell Morris, thank you so much for joining us on You Cannot Be Serious.
Sam, Don and Phoebe, hello.
Russell.
Hello, Russell.
Lovely to speak to you.
Was that working? Right, that's working. Mate, thank you so much for joining us. Now, what are you doing up there, just for a start, please, in Queensland? You're domiciled there now?
I don't know if you want to know right now what I'm doing, because I'm actually sitting in my underpants.
That's got us up and about already.
Beautiful weather as usual. It's been very stormy, but it's quite steamy as well. So it's beautiful. So I'm just sitting here, and I've been waiting to talk to you guys. So it's a lovely day.
So Russell, the last time and how we got to have a chat to you is that I saw you at Molly Meldrum's 80th. You were one of the speakers there. And, of course, you have a great relationship with Molly, or you did, because he, as I think you said, and it says in the blurb about your life, that he started you when he was on Go Set. He sort of took you under his wing, and the rest is history, as they say. Is that fair?
Yeah, it's ridiculous. You think about the odds, and like everyone says to me, oh, you're so good and you've done so well in the music business, so talented. Well, I'll tell you what, in the music business you need at least 60% luck. And I think I've spoken to Don about this before. And what are the odds of meeting someone who comes down as a mate with another band? He's not even their roadie because they won't even let him touch any of the equipment. And he comes up to you the next day and says, listen, I really loved you guys. Can I manage you? Can I produce your records? Can I get you a record deal? And you say yes. Like, we were so naive back in those days. He had no credentials whatsoever. Unbeknown to us, this guy turned out to be one of the greatest record producers this country's ever had. And the odds are phenomenal. And to stumble upon those odds is quite astounding.
Russell, how did you get into music? Because you grew up in Richmond. You went to, I think, Richmond Tech, and you started as an 18-year-old with Somebody's Image.
Well, what happened, Don? I was going to school. I liked acting. I wanted to try my hand at acting, but never thought about joining a band. I loved music, and my friends had a band, and they would practice, and I'd go along, and we'd go to parties, and everyone would sit around and sing. And their singer got poached by another band, and his name was Ronnie Charles.
Oh.
And he got poached by a band called The Group, which were very successful. So they came and knocked on my door and said, well, do you want to sing with us? And I said, I can't sing. And they said, yes, you can. We've heard you. You've been singing at rehearsals with us. So I said, oh, not really. I want to finish my diploma. And they said, well, just join us for Christmas. And I said, oh, and they said, you'll meet a lot of girls. And I thought, oh, that's not a bad incentive there. So I did. I joined them, and then we went down and worked at Anglesey because the group who'd stolen Ronnie Burns felt guilty and gave us a free spot down there. And unbeknownst to them and Ian Meldrum, who was their mate at the time, I had a lot of friends in Torquay and Anglesey because that's where I used to surf. And we went on and started playing, and they went nuts. So Meldrum thought, wow, these guys must be phenomenal. But we were very raw.
But you were doing schooling, didn't you? Go to Swinburne Tech. So how did you combine your music with your academic? You're trying to be. I think you're doing commerce or business at Swinburne. Is that correct?
Yeah, I was doing that, and excuse me. And what happened? I was combining the two, and the late nights of playing in the band sort of took their toll. And I got to my final year. And I said to my parents, I said, listen, I'm reasonably young. I've dropped a few subjects. I can come back and do a couple of catch-up years and pick up the subjects that I've dropped and finish my diploma. But what I want to do right now is to do music. And to their credit, they said, it's your life. You do what you want. We will stand behind you no matter what. So I decided to do the music because I said to them, by the time I'm 25, I'd say I'll be probably too old for the music business, so I'll go back and do my studies. And that was very strange because we all thought it was a young man's business at that stage.
So you said that it took your toll, your life took a toll from the excess work. Was that because just of the excess work, or were you part of the scene where the alcohol and the amphetamines and the analgesics were part and parcel of the industry, Russell?
No, not at that stage. That was later, I guess.
Yeah.
But at that stage, we were quite naive. But the problem is we would work because of a poor band in those days. For instance, you would have to work at, say, Hamilton or something, and you would drive there and finish the show, and usually couldn't afford accommodation, so you'd drive home. And you would get home at like all hours,
yep.
And then you would have to get up the next day and go to college. And it became really difficult. And then all of a sudden you get someone offer you a week away somewhere. And you'd have to drive to Queensland and just spend a week in Queensland. Of course, you've missed out a week of work at college. So it became really problematic.
So your whole career is broken into on the extensive Wikipedia information. Your whole career is broken into 5 stages. The Chicago, New York section of it, the 78 to 96, 1,000 Suns, and then from 96 to 2006, Ronnie Burns, Daryl Cotton, and Jim Keys. 2012 to 18, Sharkmouth, which I think seemed to be an indigenous period of your singing. Is that correct? And then 2023, you're currently Morris Springfield. Is that reasonable breakdown of your career?
And the goats. I do the goats as well, which is called the Caprettos. We were going to call ourselves the goats, but we thought we're being a bit big-headed.
The greatest of all time.
Yeah, because we love footy. Like and some of the goats that you can name: Nathan Lyon, Michael Jordan, Dustin Martin. Just lots of players. Gary Ablett, all that sort of stuff. And so we thought, oh no, we better not call ourselves that. So we called ourselves Caprettos, which is goat in Italian. So, and that's Darryl Braithwaite, Jack Jones, Ray Thistlethwaite from Thirsty Merc, and myself. And we've been doing big tours. The tours are big, like convention centres and things like that. So it's been very good.
So when you just look at when you look at the extensive Australian talent, you are in the upper echelon of the Australian talent. I've written down. I won't read them all out. Well, I got Skyhooks, Normie Road, Ted Mullery, Mark Holden, Masters Apprentice, Easy Beats, Axiom, loved ones, Johnny O'Keefe, Billy Thorpe, English, Barnes, Little River Band, Shirley Stride. This goes, there's about 50 names here, and you are in the top 3 of all those from all accounts of the stuff that you read. It's an extraordinary career, and Phoebe, you've been brought up with Russell Morris?
Well, I have. And Russell, I wanted to take you back to The Real Thing, because that is an iconic Australian song, and I'd love to know a little bit more about how that actually came to be, because at its time, when it was released, it was completely unique in the sense that it was 6 minutes long, and the pop songs at that time really didn't go past about 3 minutes, did they?
No, I think there was one that was, I think it was Classical Gas. I think that might have been the one.
Hey
but
Jude.
What happened...
Hey Jude was as long as...
Hey Jude, yeah.
Yep.
And well, Hey Jude was the inspiration for Ian Meldrum with that. What happened, Johnny Young approached me at one stage and said, listen, I heard you're looking for songs. And I said, yeah, well, I write myself, but I'm just a little bit, I just don't want to, I'm a bit insecure about my own songs presently. What have you got? And he played me a couple of songs, and Ian was there, and a guy called Michael Barnett. And we said, yeah, they're not bad. They're not bad songs, but we're really looking for something different, because all those songs, all the other artists that were around at the time, like Ronnie Burns, John Farnham and all that, I said, they all could have recorded these. I want something that's different. He said, well, I haven't got anything that's different. He said, I wrote this song as a joke. He said, it's like a sort of tongue-in-cheek rock song, but this is for a band. We said, play it. And he played it. The whole 3 of us looked at each other and looked at him and said, that's the song we want. He went, what? You're nuts. He said, that's not a solo artist song. And we said, we disagree. We think it is. And the way Johnny Young wrote it.
Yeah, Johnny Young wrote it.
Incredible. And so after you all sort of, it was presented as a joke, and then suddenly everyone in the room goes, that's it. So what happened next? How much work went into it? How much did Molly put into that song?
Well, without Molly Meldrum, that song wouldn't have been anything, because the way Johnny played it to us was very, very much like a song called Pictures of Matchstick Men. And it was like full on from start to finish, like a rock song. And Ian said, I like it. I'd like to do it in a different... And Johnny said, oh no, it should be done like this. And Ian said, right, well, you're banned from the studio. So he wasn't allowed to come to the studio. And Ian and my idea were to make it like Hurdy-Gurdy Man meets I Am the Walrus meets Hey Jude. But it wasn't meant to be 6 minutes long. That was only an accident. And the band got excited and started playing like crazy towards the end. And the engineer went to push the talk back button and say, okay, guys, stop. And then he said, no, let them play. Let them have some fun. We'll fade it. He rang me later that night and said, listen, I've got a great idea. Let's make the record 6 minutes long. And I said, can't. How? No one will play it. And I said, what are you going to do for the last 3 minutes? He said, put sound effects, Lubby. I said, Ian, how many sound effects can you put in 3 minutes? He said, trust me, I'll do it. And the whole thing, he was the architect of the whole song. Without him, the song wouldn't have been what it was.
Is that his moment of glory, Ian Meldrum?
Molly, yep.
Could he only go down from there, do you think, or has he had other...
Oh, he's produced some phenomenal records. He produced Smiley for Ronnie Burns. He produced my next number one, which was Part 3 into Paper Walls and Girl I Love. He was an excellent record producer, and even if you listen back to the songs he produced for Somebody's Image, which was that band we were talking about earlier, the sounds on those records are very, very, very good. I think he could have been a worldwide sensation, but he ended up becoming a personality, and he moved away from record production because he doesn't know what because he's not musical. He doesn't know what he wants. So he'll go into the studio and he'll say to the guitar player, I want it to sound like sparkling stars on a cold night. Or I want that keyboard to sound like a herd of elephants coming over the hill. And it's like, and they go, and they keep experimenting because the player experiments and experiments and experiments. It takes so much time. And the record company pulls their hair out and say, we're not doing any more with you. You're too expensive. So he also shot himself in the foot that way. But he could have learnt discipline if he had continued, and I reckon he would have been phenomenal.
Russell, I'm an unabashed Russell Morris fan, having watched you with somebody's image at the Lawn Foreshore back in the 60s. Your microphone technique. Now, I get criticised here because my microphone technique leaves a lot to be desired. You put your nose over the microphone. Is that because it's so big you can't hide it, or does that give you the correct distance from the microphone?
Many reasons, but the main reason was the first time I joined the band and I was singing. Like a number of times, people dancing down the front are flailing their arms around like crazy, and they'll whack the microphone stand accidentally. And if the microphone stand is like 4 inches from your mouth, it has a bit of way to travel, so it builds up a bit of momentum. If you have your mouth right on it, it just gives you a bit of a jolt.
And you rest your nose on the top. You rest your nose on top of the microphone.
Yeah, so it doesn't have a long way to travel. It'll still give you a bit of a welt, but it won't smash your front teeth out. So that's what I did from very early, and I found out that using those 57 and 58 mics, it's a much better sound on your voice if you're right on that mic, because they're not really directional and they're not really live enough. You've got to really get onto them and really punch them, you know.
Now, listen, I still watch your stuff. As I say, I'm an unabashed fan. When did you adapt the real thing? Now, when it came out, yeah, it was a terrific hit and it was manufactured and whatever else, but even me, as a fan, thought they'll never play this at a concert or a pub or whatever else. But you have since adapted it. When did you actually make the brave step of saying, I am going to change this to suit what I am doing now?
Oh, I've virtually always had to play it or it would have been lynched. So I've been playing it from day one. It's one of those songs in Western music, when songs are written in fourths, they're very pleasing to the Western ear. So I could actually sit down with an acoustic guitar and play it just by myself, and people love it. It's because of the nature of the way the chords work. Hush was another one. It's in the same thing. Hey Jude, Hey Joe is another one in fourth. And those songs really, for some reason, are very pleasing, and they sound great when you play them, no matter what happens.
Russell, what are your thoughts on artists who don't play their big hit? And the reason why I asked that question is a few years ago, well, pre-COVID, Rod Stewart toured Australia and he didn't perform Sailing. And I remember there was quite a big story about disappointed fans feeling that they'd been let down, that they hadn't heard that hit. And also just a couple of days ago, the Red Hot Chili Peppers were in Australia doing their run of shows, and at their first concert they didn't perform Under the Bridge, which was their first super hit. What's your thoughts on bands not playing the big hit?
Well, I learned a really good lesson. I was living in Los Angeles and I went to see Chicago, who I love, and we went to a big outdoor concert. And Chicago manager was Gercio, I think he was, and he was also a musician. He also managed the Beach Boys. When the Beach Boys supported Chicago, and they went on first, of course.
Yep.
The Beach Boys it was like they played 21 number one hits in a row. And at one stage they had to stop the concert. It was Anaheim Stadium, and ask the people in the baseball stands in the higher tiers to stop dancing, because you could see it moving.
Yep.
You'd be sitting on the other side and the whole thing is moving. And they said if they didn't stop dancing and jumping around, they'd have to stop the concert. So they sort of calmed them to a certain extent. And the Beach Boys that night were phenomenal, because there have been times when they haven't been up to scratch. But this night they delivered. They were fantastic. Then Chicago came on and played all their new albums.
Oh, yeah.
And people were leaving in droves.
Yeah.
And I thought, wow, here's a lesson here,
Just
And
give the public what they want.
Well, you got to wear two hats. As
Yeah.
a writer, you write to please yourself. That's what I do. I write to please myself. If people like it, that's great. If you're lucky enough to have a hit record, and people are going to spend their hard-earned money to come and see you, I think your obligation then is to wear the other hat and you deliver. You've got to. It's like going to see your favourite football team, and you want them to deliver, and all of a sudden you feel like that they're not. They're just behind the ball all the time. They don't seem to be tackling hard enough and things like that. You get disappointed, and so people do get disappointed sometimes. And so my job as a performer is to make people feel that they've spent their hard-earned money and they've got value.
So what is your favourite song that you've written, and what enchants you or captivates you about other groups or stars or people? I noticed all the people that I read out there before, all of them are men, all of them are males. There's only, I don't know why, but there's the only person that I could find that they recommended was up in the top echelon was Chrissy Amphlett and Wendy Stapleton. I couldn't, Wendy Saddington rather. I couldn't find anyone else. I wonder why that is.
I know. Well, Renee Gayer should be up there because she was sensational. Judith Durham, unbelievable. Olivia, probably. There's lots. Marsha Hines, big star. Kate Sobrano.
But is that from the 60s and 70s?
Female artists. Sorry?
For those people, those that I read out were predominantly from the 60s and 70s. Yeah. So the women made a running a bit later on.
Yeah, they did make a running later on. Sorry, I misunderstood you. Yeah, they did. And it was a male-dominated scene then, but it did change. There were a lot of artists around in that time. There was Little Paddy, there was, Dinah Lee, Yvonne Barrett. A lot of those singers were around at that time. Of course, Wendy Saddington. Renee Gayer was around that time too. Yeah.
And what songs? What group or artist did you like? What song did you like?
Oh, I've got a really strange, eclectic taste. My favourite artists run from Frank Sinatra to Nat King Cole to Pink Floyd, early, very, very, very early Elvis. Blues artists such as John Lee Hooker.
What about your peers?
Rolling Stone.
What about your Australian peers? Who did you?
There's a lot of acts. Crowded House were head and shoulders above a lot of people. I love them. I loved the Divinals. I thought they were sensational. Midnight Oil, liked them very much. John Farnham, what a singer! God, how many nightmares has he given other singers?
Is there a do you get on well with them all, or is there a professional jealousy that ripples through the industry?
It's funny you should mention that. In the early days, there was a bit of a rivalry going on, but now it's almost like everyone that's left. It's like we're old soldiers and we've all been in the trenches. And everyone, I can't think of anyone in the music business that doesn't like being around people that have been around a while. Like just recently we did a show in Sydney and Jimmy Barnes turned up and got up and sang. And his hips are doing really well. He was moving around all right. And he's only had the hip operation about 5 weeks ago or something. So Jimmy got up and sang with us, and he's such a beautiful guy. He's lovely. And Daryl Braithwaite is a really good mate of mine. And all those people are really, I can't think of anyone that I really dislike in the music business.
Here or overseas? Yep.
Yeah.
You had a shot in overseas. I think you were denied a green card for a period of time that made your the time element of you being there pass. Is that a reasonable statement or not?
Yeah, timing is everything. I couldn't get out and work because I didn't have a green card, so I couldn't do anything really. So it was a bit difficult, and it was a very interesting period of my time. I won't go into it now, but I became not involved, but I became friends with a lot of people in the mafia in New York, and it was very bizarre. And I didn't know they were mafia at first, and I would crack jokes, and finally, in the end, the penny dropped. But they never tried to dominate me or tried to get me to do anything. They just liked me because I was Australian.
How did you become into the? How did you get into their company, and on what basis were they hanging?
Well,
yep.
The record producer who owned the studio, and he was a singer on Long Island. He was a beautiful guy, Eddie Germano. I loved him, and I would joke with him all the time, say, "Come on, you're one of the." And he said, "No, I know all those guys. Don't worry about it. No, I know them all." He said, "They're beautiful, And we would go down to Little Italy to eat, and we'd go to Louis' Limehouse or Umberto's, and the waiters would nearly fall over themselves to get us the best table. So I'd constantly tease Eddie, and he'd say, "Don't be ridiculous." He said, "I know all the guys, but And one night, from the studio, he drove us home. It was snowing, and we stopped on what's it called, Fifth Avenue, because we were on 55th, and it was a one-way street, and you couldn't go down. And there was hardly any cars. We got out, and as we got out, a cab pulled up behind us. Eddie drove off, and the cab driver and his passenger got out and ran over and said, "Stop, hold it." And we turned around, they pulled out their badges, and they said, "Police, hold it." And they started asking us questions. And when they found out I was Australian and the other guy with us was South African and the other guy was Californian, they just became friendly and started talking, except for it was like the good cop, bad cop. And at the end, the little guy said, we stopped him because he went through a red, we wanted to talk to him because he went through a red light. And I thought, well, why didn't you talk to him? And then he turned as they were leaving and he said, "Tell that son of a bitch we're going to nail his ass." And I thought, what? And the penny dropped, and the next day I mentioned to Eddie, and Eddie just sat there and laughed and laughed and laughed. 2 nights later, we went to Umberto's, and we're sitting there, and one of the waiters said, "Hey, you and Junior got to come to the old man's birthday party." And he said, "No, I'm with Russell." And the guy goes, "Oh, yeah, the kangaroo, yeah." And he said, "You're not coming to the party?" And he said, No, we can't. He said, "Oh, it's out in Palm Springs. You'll have a good time." "No, I can't do it." So he goes away, and I said, "Who's the old man?" And he said, "Oh, no, just, I said, "Who is it?" And he said, "It's Carlos Gambino."
Oh, no. Fantastic.
And I said, "Are you kidding?" I said, "Let's go." I said, "It'll be fantastic." And he said, "You idiot." He said, "You're trying to get a green card." He said, "If we go there, you'll be kicked out of the country the next day." So that's how it all occurred. And it was a really strange, interesting experience.
Russell, to me, your career as far as body of work go, correct me, I listened to you, Russell Morris, 1975, the album Russell Morris, when I'm driving to Queensland each year with the horses from Narrandera, going across that boring drive, and also up to Narrabri from Dubbo. But you had Paper Walls, A Girl That I Love, I can just go on, Rachel, Mr. America, Wings of an Eagle, Sweet, Sweet Love. It just goes on and on. Then you come up with Shark Mouth, Van Diemen's Land and Red Dirt, which is in the, 2012, around about then, 14, 13, I don't know. So what do you
12,
consider your best body of work? Because to me, there's 2 separate Russell Morrises.
Yes, it's 2 separate. Strangely enough, Shark Mouth and Van Diemen's Land outsold that album you were talking about, the best of, by probably 5-1. The biggest sellers I've had, they were. So it was wonderful to be able to do a new style, because most people around my age don't get a second crack at it. And I was lucky enough to get a second crack to get into the charts and be played on radio. So that was a lot of fun for me, and I enjoy playing the blues, but I still enjoy playing the old stuff as well. It's something I'm not ashamed of any of my stuff, which is good. Although maybe there is. I wouldn't play It's Only a Matter of Time. I don't like that. But all the others I tend to play.
You just said the radio, you get a second chance. And it says here, I'm not sure why I'm asking you this, Russell, but it says Russell Morris and the Rubes. Oh, so sorry, I should know how to pronounce that. It says the radio stations refused a little to play that. Is that an accurate statement, or have I read that incorrectly?
No, it's true. Strangely enough, the biggest successes I've had in my life in music, not personal, but in music, were when record companies didn't want them. First was The Real Thing. EMI thought it was rubbish and didn't want to release it, and we had to go around the country and get DJs to sign petitions that they would play it. And then when I did Shark Mouth, not one record company in the country wanted it. And it was only on the 11th. I pressed 500 copies, and I said I'll sell them at shows to make back my money. At the 11th hour, a company took it on, and it just went through the roof.
Wow.
So people think, oh, they rejected me, I mustn't be any good. Well, the problem is some people just don't see things sometimes.
So what, I mispronounced that, is it the Rubies, Don? What is it?
The Rubes.
What is that?
Rube is a good bloke.
I see.
Yeah, it's an Australian colloquialism.
One that I've never heard of.
Can I just go back to Sharkmouth? That was a number one album, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Which I think is just fantastic. And even at the time, I think it was really underreported how successful that album was.
Well, even to this day, I will do shows, and a lot of people are unaware of all of the blues stuff. Not everyone, but a lot are. People who mainly tend to live in the past, and they're not aware of what I've done. And I understand that. Nostalgia is really good for people, and as they think of the better times, so they don't really tend to move on and embrace anything that's new. But sales-wise, they were bigger than anything, the blues albums, and it was fun. Otherwise, if they hadn't been successful, I would have had to go back to my other career.
Where did you get the gift of lyric writing? Because your background to me suggests an accountant, dull, boring type individual, yet you're able to get in contact with a lot of, you're able to put words together to create.
Got away with words, Don, and we appreciate the question. Yeah.
I'm not sure. I guess I do read a fair bit. I like reading. And I guess it's one of those things, but I listen to other lyric writers and I want to throw myself under a truck. You listen to Bob Dylan and you think, how does he get that correlation between that part of the story and the other part of the story, or Don Henley or Paul Simon? The lyrics are just like, wow. So sometimes I find my lyrics a bit clunky. I'll listen to my songs. I guess it's you see your own faults very easily, and I look at them and I go, oh, that's horrible. Why didn't I change that? Why did I put that on the record, But that's the way it is, and some lyrics I'm happy with, and strangely enough, the lyrics that I'm happiest with are the songs that are the least successful.
No, mate, it's an extraordinary talent and you write all your own songs and perform them, and it is an extraordinary talent. And if you're just sitting in your room one day, the general public, sit down and see if you can think of a tune and some words and write a song. It's an amazing talent. I must ask you this: what did you think of, and did you ever see Elvis Presley?
No, I never saw him. I loved his earlier stuff. I loved the Sun sessions. When I was in Memphis, I went to the Sun studio just to be in the same studio that, because it's a tourist thing now, that Elvis was in. Carl Perkins was in.
Yeah.
What's his name? Johnny Cash was in there. And Howling Wolf was in those studios, and to be actually in that studio where they recorded, which was like a little shop, like a little lolly shop, and that was fantastic. And I loved that earlier stuff that Elvis did, and he was such a great singer.
He was.
If you those early ones, the backing is really very, very minimal at the back. The thing that carries those songs so well is his voice.
Yep.
The rhythm that he sings with, and that he had that incredible rhythm, the way he would sing, and I reckon you could take everything off those records, the drums and guitars, and his voice would just carry it.
And is he the greatest of all time in your eyes?
Oh no, there's lots. Frank Sinatra is one of the greatest as well for me. I just love Frank Sinatra. Yep. I think he was sensational. Nat King Cole, I think, is great. Paul Carrick, the guy that sang In the Living Years. He's a beautiful singer. Paul Rogers from Free, great singer. Led Zeppelin. I nearly wanted to give up singing when I heard Led Zeppelin. I thought, if I can't sing like him, I don't want to sing. You know, that was phenomenal singing to me.
Russell, can I ask, when can we see you back here in Melbourne?
I'm there this week, I think, but I think I'm doing, where are we working? Working at Garage 13 in Moorabbin, and then to the Brunswick Ballroom this week. And then then I come back and I join the Goats again for a while, and we travel with the Goats. And then I go back and do my own stuff. And I never look beyond 3 weeks, so I don't know what I'm doing beyond there. There's no point cluttering my brain with stuff that's inconsequential. Is only going to make me think about other things. So I only look 2 weeks ahead.
Talking about not cluttering your brain up, did you get caught up in the high times of, as we say, sex, drugs and rock and roll, or did you manage to minimally escape all that?
Oh, no. Unfortunately, I got caught up in a lot of stuff for a while there, yes. Doing all the bad things, all the above that you mentioned, yes.
When you look back on your...
As I got older, I sort of calmed down, so
Yeah.
it's okay.
When you look back on your life, that decision you make not to go ahead with your college degree, has it been the best decision you've made?
Yes, yeah, but you never know where I would have ended up. Like one of my best mates was doing the same course, and he now is he's been a great financial advisor to me, but he is phenomenal. He's been so incredibly successful. So I don't know what doors would have opened up for me. However, I imagine I would have ended up in prison because I'm such a bad bookkeeper and accountant. I probably would have cut corners. And I probably would have been charged and thrown into the clink. So, but he's great. He was very clever.
Now,
in fact, one of the exams we went through, I think it was Economics 2. I hadn't gone to any lectures, and he turned up to my place and said, "Oh, you're going to Economics 2 tomorrow?" I said, no. He said, "Why not?" I said, "I didn't go to any lectures." He said, "Oh, come on." He said, "I reckon I can predict the paper." His name is John Beecroft, by the way. And I said, "Oh, don't be ridiculous." And he said, "I can predict it." And he wrote out all this. He said, "Learn all this and go in." And I think in those days, I think it was a 5-pointer, 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 or a 10-pointer, 10-pointer, and then a 30 and a 30, like the big ones. He only missed down on one of the smaller questions. I got 84. and 3 days later, I had no idea what I'd learnt parrot fashion.
Now,
Unbelievable.
So your friend Ian, Molly Meldrum now, I was at his 80th. He's struggling a bit, isn't he? And do you keep in touch with him, or what do you think his future is?
I try to pop in and see him when I'm in Melbourne. The problem is I usually fly in on the day of the first gig, which I don't get there till about 3. Then I go to the gig, do sound check. I do the gig, then I go back to my comm, and it's usually that morning I'll try and pop around and see him, just to see how he's going. And yeah, he is struggling a little bit. He looked a forlorn figure the other night.
He did.
So,
how he's got to 80 is extraordinary, and I hope he gets to 90. But it's amazing.
It is, yeah. He's had a phenomenal career, and he's done a lot of things. And a lot of people consider him a buffoon, like the mumbling. One of the cleverest guys I've ever met, actually, and some of the things he's done that have enhanced his career were done not out of accident, but they were actually, I believe, pre-planned. Some of the great things he did, and people went, "Oh, who is that crazy guy?" But I believe he did things on purpose to make himself bigger than he was, and he was very clever with my career as well, the things he did. He's one of the smartest guys I've met.
Well, now listen, Russell Morris, who is sitting, I presume, still in your underpants, listening and having a chat to us. You are...
No, I put some trousers on, so it's okay.
Right, yeah, well, that's good. We're all getting up and about if we thought we were speaking to you in your underwear. You are a fantastic Australian icon and star, and we're so grateful you took the time to speak to us from Queensland on You Cannot Be Serious. And we wish you well, and we'll keep following you till the end of the earth. So yes, Don. Well,
what is it? Hang on.
Do you want to ask him another question? I was
hang on,
giving
Garage.
him a wrap-up, and you...
Garage 13, Moorabbin. Is that where you're playing this weekend or this week?
Yeah, Garage 13 on Friday night, John, yeah.
I might try and get there.
You and I might try and get there.
If you're going to come, give me a ring before you... Yeah, and we'll catch up beforehand.
Oh, okay.
You have no
But
intention.
I'm a little bit disappointed. I thought you guys were going to be controversial, and you've just been...
Well,
we're in awe of you. Well, I'm certainly in awe of you.
Hey, Russell, I've dipped a toe in the water. I've asked you about the drugs. I was trying to get the sex and drugs and rock and roll part of it. I've asked you who you liked and who you didn't like and who's ripped you off. I'm not sure if I asked you any of those questions, but give us something we could hang our hat on.
What's your most scandalous story, Russell?
Yeah, Brian Mannix said that you guys were really wild and crazy, but I don't know if he's, I don't know if he's a good judge of wild and crazy.
Well, take Phoebe's a lead there. Give us something that we can hang our hat on. What did you ask him, Phoebe?
I want your most scandalous story before we sign off.
That's it.
Oh, you can't. I can't think of a scandalous story off the top of my head. You need to sort of point me in some sort of direction, and I don't want to sort of libel myself. Or
all right. What people have you escorted out over the journey?
Escorted out?
Yes. Have we bedded down or gone out with or fraternised with?
Not as many as you. I couldn't even get your leftovers. It was terrible.
Don's that busy he had to put a boy on when he was in his early days. All right. Well, I've got a feeling you're not going to incriminate yourself, and I'm going to just.
If you paint me into a corner, sometimes I can answer it, but you haven't painted me close enough to the corner.
Oh, well, that just shows you. We're just dumb football. Oh well, Phoebe's a very, very smart.
I've never played football in my life.
We're dumb footballers who wouldn't know how to paint people into a corner. We're too naive.
I was lucky enough to go out to dinner the other night with Ian Botham, and we were talking, and he was talking about musicians, and I said, I'm not interested in musicians. I said, they're usually dumb, and I don't really get along with a lot of... I like them, but my biggest thrill is meeting sports people, because I love the footy, as you know, and I love cricket. I love boxing. Boxing is one of my favourite sports. And I get such a thrill out of meeting sportsmen because I believe...
Well, come on, who have you met? What world stars have you met who are sportsmen or sportswomen?
Dustin Martin. But Ruben Olivares.
Yes.
Oh, the boxer.
Yeah, and of course Lionel Rose was a good mate of mine.
Yeah.
Sports people, Joe Namath.
Oh,
Joe Namath.
Yeah, Jimmy Connors.
Oh,
yeah.
And I love, because I believe sports people, everyone's born with sort of a gift. This is where it gets very deep and where you'll probably hang up on me here. Scientifically, I believe that sports people read light photons faster than they've been gifted with reading a light photon faster, so they can make a decision quicker.
Reflex and instinct.
I think with a bowler, for instance, when a batsman's facing it, he has very, very little time to decide where that ball is going to go. Now, it would be past me before I could even think, because I can't read those light photons. And the reason I got that theory, I saw a documentary on animals, and this guy was talking, and he said animals read photons faster than us. He said, so if you try to catch a squirrel, to the squirrel look like you're moving in slow motion. So I believe sports people like great footballers and great cricketers and great tennis players see photons much more earlier than anyone else, whereas musicians hear sound differently to other people. As painters, see light differently to other people. The way they perceive the world, I guess, light-wise, enhances their imagination. Whereas I wouldn't see the world like Vincent van Gogh, for instance. He would have seen it very differently.
That is a very interesting take on why people are good at what they do. I've not heard that before, Russell. I'm not taking the urine. That is a very interesting scenario. I've just Ian Botham's come out on my boat several times, and I say to people when we have 20 or 10 or 20, 15 people on the boat, first thing I say to them, I said, for God's sake, please don't ask him anything about cricket. He's come out to actually enjoy the sun and have a few drinks, and please don't bust his chops about cricket. So
yeah, he's a lovely, modest man. I really enjoyed his company. It was great.
Well, we're going to say this again. We've enjoyed your company. Thank you very much indeed, Russell Morris, and we look forward to your next endeavours.
All right. Thanks, Sam, Phoebe, and thanks, Don. And Sam, just read a little bit more about photons and about sound waves, because they're all waves. Everything's a wave.
That's fantastic. I would have said sports people have better reflex and instinct than others, but you've put it into a more technical jargon, which I appreciate.
Yeah. Well, they'd have to have that twitch. They'd have to have that muscle twitch for better reflexes, but also you've got to be able to see the ball before you can get it. You've got to be able to see things operating at a slower level. So I believe footballers see things moving a bit slower than I would if I was on the field, whereas everything would become a blur.
Mind you, Don and I are pretty slow at the best of times, but we survived. All the best.
Okay, see you later.
Yeah, thanks Russ.